So to no one's surprise, one of the most obnoxious streamer in the world, Johnny Somali, got sentenced to 6 months of hard labor in a South Korean prison.
I know for a fact I'm not gonna go to jail. Not one day in jail. I'm gonna laugh my ass off when all these motherfuckers are saying I'm going for 30 years, 20 years, 5 years, 10 years. Bro, I'm telling you, I'm not even gonna do one day, bro. They're gonna give me a fine. They're gonna say, don't come back to Korea.
If you're employed and don't know who this is, Johnny Somali, real name Ramzi Khalid Ismail, is a 25-year-old IRL streamer who spent the last few years flying to countries with high trust society, harassing and rage baiting the citizens for content. He's been banned from basically every streaming platform that exists for various reasons involving harassment and generally being the worst person in any given room, and still somehow kept going.
I'm sorry. I'm mentally ill.
Right, so in September 2024, this guy lands in Seoul and decides to be a public nuisance like he always does. Within a week, he's on the subway blasting Kim Jong-un's speeches at full volume, playing North Korean anthems on city buses, and waving a Japanese rising sun flag at students, which is a symbol Koreans associate with the Japanese colonial occupation. So basically like showing up to a veterans hospital in enemy uniform.
Hey, send this clip to the president of Korea. Send this clip. I'm talking to you, the president of Korea. You can suck my d. I respect Kim Jong-un more than you, Lee Jae-myung, little.
Then we get to the worst one. There's a memorial in Seoul called the Statue of Peace. It's dedicated to the Korean women who were victims of the Japanese military during World War II. And this here looks at it and decided to kiss it on stream. Then a week later, he comes back with baby oil, pours it all over the statue, and films himself doing a lap dance routine. If you were designing a single action guaranteed to make South Korean citizens hate you forever, that would probably be it. He also printed out photos of himself kissing it and tried to hand them to random people on the street.
You know, you guys lost to so many countries in the past. So you guys think you can win against me, you're not gonna win against me. Instead of me apologizing to you, you Koreans should apologize to me.
Then there was the 7-Eleven incident in Mapogu where he tried to buy alcohol, got refused by the employee, and responded by throwing instant noodle broth and playing vile text-to-speech donations at her. On a separate subway stream, his TTS donations started saying, "I have a bomb," loud enough for people on the train to hear. He also carried a bag of rotten fish around Seoul for a few days, swinging it in people's faces, which isn't a crime I even knew had a name before this. But apparently it's one of the charges he got sentenced for. Then they had enough of this clown. On November 2nd, 2024, the South Korean government hit him with an exit ban. Basically means, congratulations, you live here now. You can't leave the country until the whole legal situation was dealt with. 9 days later, the Seoul Southern District prosecutors indicted him for obstruction of business, which carries up to 5 years in prison. And they just kept stacking the charges until it was 8 total. 4 for obstruction of businesses, 2 for minor offenses like the rotten fish situation, and 2 massive ones for distributing AI-generated sexual deepfakes of Korean streamers named BongBong and Yongman. That one alone carries up to 7 years per count in Korea. So this guy is looking down the barrel of a decade plus in a foreign prison, and his response is to post a TikTok of himself flipping off the camera while holding an emergency US passport like it's some kind of a get out of Korea free card. He then spent the next few months on Discord with his fans trying to figure out how to escape, and some of the plans were absolutely. One of them involved taking a train to Jeju Island, which is an island with no trains. A later one involved buying an inflatable raft in Incheon and paddling himself into international waters, where he believes Korean police cannot arrest him.
I'm going to Incheon, I'm renting a boat or an inflatable raft, and I'm gonna stream sailing to international waters.
In reality, it would have ended with him either drowning or being picked up by the Korean Coast Guard.
As soon as I hit international water, can't touch me.
Right, so around this time, something interesting happened where the Korean streaming community figured out that beating up Johnny Somali on camera could be profitable. A Korean YouTuber put out a bounty of around 1 million won, which is about $770 according to this article, for information on his location. The nickname they gave him was the Golden Goblin. This is a reference to an enemy from Diablo 3 that drops a bunch of loot when you kill it. So basically they turned Johnny into a real-world enemy NPC that you can farm for rewards. And people started actually hunting him down. One group figured out his apartment by identifying a pizza box visible in one of his streams. Another group located him later by analyzing the pattern of bricks on a wall behind him. These were regular people with jobs, just doing this for fun in their free time. That's how much they hate this guy for what he's done. The most famous hit came from a guy named Udal-gun or Udal-gun, who's a former Republic of Korea Navy sergeant turned YouTuber. He tracked Johnny down and punched him in the back of the head on stream. Then afterwards said he was just doing his civic duty as a Korean. He then got fined 10 million won, raised about $3,000 through crowdfunding, and then an American ex-cop who goes by Donut Operator PayPal'd him the remaining 4,000 to cover the rest of the fine. So basically the internet crowdfunded a former Korean Navy SEAL to beat up Johnny Somali. By early 2025, his whole career is completely cooked. Every platform banned him, his main YouTube got terminated after it allegedly got hacked and started broadcasting adult content, and he's now streaming on a new YouTube channel registered under his roommate's name. That roommate, by the way, is a guy named Hank Yu. Hank Yu, who got deported from the United States in 2020 for lying on federal firearms paperwork and was involuntarily committed to psychiatric care twice. This is the guy that Johnny Somali trusts with his career, apparently. The dream team. Hank then starts begging for PayPal donations, saying how much of a burden Johnny is to him, like he will starve without the donations. It's like, dude, get a Korean Uber Eats job or something, man. Now, the trial itself was something else. For his first hearing on March 7th, 2025, Johnny showed up about an hour late, reportedly hungover from drinking at 5 in the morning. At some point during the proceedings, he told the judge that Korea is a vassal state of America.
That's what I told her. I said Korea is a vassal state.
American citizens way better.
100%. I said it's a vassal state. You treat Americans with respect.
Which isn't really the kind of line you want to open with when you're facing prison time. His whole legal defense was to plead insanity using bipolar disorder, which would have been a fine strategy if he hadn't live streamed himself the night before, where he literally explained to his audience that he was going to go into court the next day and pretend to be mentally ill.
When I go to the judge tomorrow and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm mentally ill. I don't know what's going on. I have a bipolar disorder." And they say, "Okay."
Turns out the Korean prosecutors can also watch YouTube, so that went about as well as you'd expect. He pleaded guilty to 6 of the 8 charges and decided to fight the 2 deepfake counts. His argument against those was that generating sexual deepfakes of real women wouldn't be illegal in the United States. Like, dude, it is illegal in the United States, and you're not even in the United States. You're still in South Korea. And to top it off, his mother sent the judge a handwritten letter asking for leniency, and that landed about as well as a chopper in a tornado. In October 2025, Johnny had his single greatest cope episode. His roommate, Hank, and one of the deepfake victims, Yongman, privately agreed to drop their personal cases against each other. And Johnny, reading this the way a 4th grader reads a contract, although I think that's an insult to 4th graders, decides one of his deepfake charges has been dismissed and goes on a full victory lap on stream, even calling out the YouTuber and commentator Atozi, who's been covering the case since the beginning of time, essentially.
Essentially, they made an agreement. If Yongman stopped pressing charges on Johnny, Hank would also do the same to him. So in their agreement, both of them dropped the charges. And Johnny heavily celebrated this. He went on a whole victory lap.
You go look at the comments in this video, Atozi tried to frame it like I lost in the last court date. when I got a charge dismissed. So where is the loss? Tell me, guys.
But the problem is, both the prosecutors have to agree to drop the charges. And clearly, they didn't.
On April 15, 2026, Judge Park Ji-won found him guilty on all 8 charges. The prosecution had been pushing for 3 years in prison with labor, plus 5 years on the sex offender registry. What he actually got was 6 months in prison with labor, an additional 20 days of detention, 5 years on the South Korean sex offender registry, a 5-year employment ban from institutions involving children or disabled people, permanent confiscation of both phones he used during his crimes, and immediate custody in the courtroom as a flight risk. Now, the 6 months is a lot softer than what the prosecutors wanted, and that's because the judge noted that one of the deepfake victims publicly said she didn't feel especially humiliated. And also, the 18 months he'd spent stuck in Korea apparently counted as a form of time served. Johnny shows up to sentencing in a suit and tie, which was surprising because this is the first time in a year and a half he's dressed like he wanted to win. He tells the judge he misses his family and deserves a second chance because he's still young, bringing out the age card. The internet reaction was mostly people happy that he's finally facing some consequences. Legal Mindset, who's been covering every hearing, tweeted that 6 months was way too light and is now openly campaigning for the prosecutors to appeal for a longer sentence. So yeah, prosecutors were asking for 3 years and the judge basically gave us the economy version. Frankly, I don't think this is gonna change Johnny at all. This dude has already done time before, got out, and immediately went on the worst possible content binge of his entire career. So the idea that 6 months of picking up soap from the floor is gonna suddenly make him self-reflect and become a productive member of society is kind of wishful thinking. He's probably in his cell right now treating this as a win. Like, I dodged 3 years. The Korean judge could not handle my court presence. The only real saving grace is that the prosecutors still have 7 days to appeal, and if they do, we could realistically see him in there for maybe about 18 months or so. But yeah, the Johnny Somali saga is probably not fully over. The second he's out, he is definitely gonna do something unhinged to remind everyone that he still exists. Still, at least for the next 6 months, he'll be busy behind bars, and you can even say he's finally employed. Anyway, that's the Johnny Somali situation. Do tell me what you guys think about it. Let me know if I miss anything important in the comments. Like and subscribe, or you'll end up as Johnny Somali's cellmate. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you around.